Hey Ergo community, my name is Johnny Wu. I am a namebase community manager. We're part of the Handshake ecosystem. So in other words, I'm one of the many community managers within the Handshake community. So for this talk, I'll start off by just a general overview about what the heck Handshake even is. And then we'll talk about why it improves your privacy and security of your internet browsing. Cool, let's get started. Oh, yeah, shout out to Root7Z, or Orhan, I believe. He cold DM'd me in Discord, reached out, told me about the summit, and asked if I wanted to present Handshake, which seems pretty relevant to the topic of the summit, with privacy and security being the focus. So, shout out to Orhan. Cool. So currently in the traditional domain name system, it's not actually possible to own a domain. So what is being explained here is the only way to truly own a domain name is to own the top level domain. So owning the .org or the .com, for example, VeriSign is a company that owns .com, and because they own it, that's why they're able to rent it out to buyers like Google.com or Facebook.com. The only way to own a domain is top level domain. So normal folks like you and I, we can't own domain names because we're all stuck renting them. And to kind of understand why the system is the way it is, it's helpful to just go over how DNS as a whole works first. DNS being the domain name system. So when you attempt to visit a website like Google.com, what your browser is doing is your browser controls something called the root zone file that will tell your browser how to get to .com, and then .com will tell your browser how to get to Google.com, and then Google.com will serve the contents of the website. If that's a little confusing with too many moving parts, that's okay. Here's an equally accurate representation. Cool. So the main takeaway is that everything begins at the root. So your browser first consults the root. You can think of the root as the root zone file as a sort of spreadsheet, where the column A of the spreadsheet are the top level domains, or like .org, .com, .net. These are in the first column of the spreadsheet. And then the second column of the spreadsheet are the servers that those top level domains actually point to. Right? So that spreadsheet, where the entire DNS resolution process begins, is controlled by a single organization called ICANN. If you wanted to get your own top-level domain, let's say .ergo, then the process is you go to ICANN and you say, "Hello, ICANN, I would really like to have .ergo." Right now, and then there's the application process. So right now their applications are closed, but back when they were open a few years ago, the application fee was $185,000. So this is not the fee to actually get .ergo. This is the fee for ICANN to tell you, okay, yes, you can have it, or no, you may not have .ergo. And then you actually have to go through a few years long process that costs like $10 million on average to actually get .ergo. And then there's annual renewal fees that are like $25,000 or $35,000 every year. Cool. So this is why Handshake exists. So Handshake decentralizes control of the root zone file away from ICANN and places it onto a decentralized blockchain that nobody owns. In the ICANN system, there's this gatekeeper who charges you funds to just tell you whether or not you're even allowed to have one. Whereas in the Handshake system, there are no gatekeepers. Names are distributed through on-chain public auctions. So anybody can participate in these, and yeah, they just happen, and highest bidder wins the name. Cool. So when evaluating really how decentralized any system is, especially naming systems, I'd say just follow the money. In Handshake's case, so follow the money, like who determines the price of each name, and then who actually gets paid when the name is sold. So for the Handshake system, we just covered that names are distributed through auctions, so the market determines the value of every given name. Right? And then who gets paid? Nobody. So the highest bidder wins the name, right? And then their bid actually just gets burned. So there is no recipient of the Handshake coin. it just disappears forever. There's a small deflationary effect on the value of the Handshake coin. And so following the money really shows like, okay, the value of each name is determined by the community or the market, and then the beneficiary of each Handshake name when the coins are burned is just coin holders or the community again. So pretty cool that following the money trail brings you right back to the community. Okay, I don't recall leaving this screenshot in, but I think the main reason is because this is Jack Dorsey, creator of a lot of amazing products such as Twitter, and he talks about why he's so excited about Bitcoin because, sure, foundational internet technology that's not controlled by or influenced by any single individual or entity. That sounds like Handshake, right? The single individual or entity is ICANN. The foundational internet technology is the domain name system that we all use if we were connected to the internet. And he talks about how Bitcoin is what the internet wants to be, and over time more of it will be, and he's absolutely correct, with Handshake being decentralizing the first layer of the internet, that domain name system, right? Cool. I've talked a lot about Handshake, but what can you actually do with this top-level domain? So I'm first just going to talk about how I personally use it. I own .johnnywu, so I have a homepage set up at home.johnnywu, which is pretty cool because it's pretty human-readable, the homepage of .johnnywu. If you go to twitter.johnnywu, then that's just a human-readable redirect. It redirects you right to my Twitter profile. My internet's a little slow since I'm on a hotspot right now, but we're on Twitter. That's my Twitter handle. But my favorite usage of my Handshake name is the fact that I don't actually need the dot. I can just delete the dot, and I can have a website that's set up at just purely JohnnyWoo. This website is actually just http://JohnnyWoo. So dotless domains, I think, are a really cool this vanity use case. But even though Handshake names, they're Handshake domain names, but there's a reason why I call them Handshake names instead of Handshake domain names, because they can be used for other naming use cases as well, beyond just domain names. So for example, what I'm showing you here is a wiki page that's created by the Handshake community. If you want to edit, so you'll notice there's no edit button here. If you want to edit it, then you just need to log in with a Handshake name. So I'll just do that if my internet is willing. Oh, okay. So the browser remembered my past login attempt, so I didn't have to go through the whole login process. But you'll see that I'm now logged in as .johnnywu that I used before, and then I now have an edit button that I can now edit the page. So pretty cool application of Handshake logins. Great. Moving on. Yes, so if you have, for the particularly curious type, you've probably attempted to visit one of my domain names while I was demoing this and realized that you could not access it. That is because Handshake names live on the decentralized Handshake blockchain that most browsers don't actually know how to get to, right? You have to tell your browser you have to do something to tell your browser how to actually get to the Handshake blockchain. And so these are various means of doing so. I labeled them level 0 through 3 to show how, both how easy, actually not even how easy, how secure and how trustless the process is. So the higher the level, the more secure, the more trustless, the more decentralized. So level 3 is running just the Handshake full node. Level 0, HNS.2, this is the gateway. This works on any browser. So if you've used Bitly before, the URL shortening service, instead of bit.ly/ and then your custom name, you can just do hns.to/ and then any Handshake name. So hns.2/JohnnyWoo will take you to my dotless website. Right? Level 1, this is what your computer probably currently uses, is a public DNS resolver. Essentially, if you connect your computer to these two IP addresses, then you are offloading the resolution process to somebody else. So you're relying on somebody else, you're trusting somebody else to serve you the proper DNS records. And this is, unless you've done something to your machine, this is how your current browsing experience works, right? You're probably relying on your ISP or something to serve you the proper records. So what's really exciting about Handshake is it's the only naming protocol with an SPV resolver. So this essentially means you get the benefits of running a full node without needing to without needing the massive amount of resources that it takes to actually run a full node. So an SPV resolver, you're resolving domain names directly from the Handshake blockchain. So you're not asking anybody else to serve you the records. You're not trusting them to serve you the proper records. You're locally resolving it on your own computer. You yourself are going to the blockchain, looking at the records, and then just taking yourself to wherever it needs to be. So in the normal process, right, your ISP can see every domain name that you're visiting, or if you change to Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1, or Google's 8.8.8.8, it's the same thing. They can see every domain name that you're resolving. So not the most private, but if you run a SPV resolver, then when you're resolving Handshake names, then it's a pretty private experience because you're just doing the resolution yourself. And so these are just some of the applications that have implemented this SPV resolver. The reasons I show this is to show how unresource intensive it is. So the Bob extension, this is just a Chrome extension. You download the Chrome extension and you got SPV resolver. You're trustlessly resolving Handshake names. Beacon, this is an iOS browser. Same thing, Fingertip. This is a software you can download on your computer, and then you're good to go. You're trustlessly resolving Handshake names. Sentinel DVPN, their decentralized VPN service. They also support this. So pretty cool. Yeah, this is just to illustrate the user experience of a developer building on a Handshake domain. And if you just compare the two, this is for IPFS. So if you want to set up a website that's hosted on IPFS, how do you do so with a traditional domain name? So like an ICANN domain name, a .com domain, or a Handshake domain name. And if you just compare the two, you'll see the experience is pretty much identical. Because Handshake at the end of the day is just DNS. It's not trying to reinvent anything. It's just decentralizing the root of DNS. Right? Very, very clean, single use case. So these are some examples of Handshake domains being used out in the wild. Library Genesis, they're a pirating website for academic papers. So you can imagine that they may want a uncensorable domain name since they have to deal with domain name takedown requests all the time. But Handshake is not just for illicit use cases either. So I want to highlight Ergo. They make it, you can think of them as the Vercel, but for the decentralized world, they just make it really easy for you to deploy stuff onto blockchain. They had their domain name taken down a couple months ago, their domain name on GoDaddy. They had that taken down. And the takedown request, the reason behind it was email spam, which was really funny because they were like, this is so weird. We don't even have an MX record. So we literally don't have an email address to send spam out from. But they still had their domain name taken down. So then that prompted them to get set up on Handshake. So now they're always accessible via their Handshake name. So the point of this is you don't necessarily need to be doing blatantly illegal stuff for your domain name to be taken down. We've spoken to insiders at GoDaddy. The just number of domain takedown requests have just been skyrocketing, right? And then you see media coverage about censorship here, there, whatnot. So yeah, just the timing and everything makes a lot of sense. Cool. Audius, they are, I think they talk about themselves as a decentralized Spotify platform, and they own .audius on Handshake. So what they've done with that is they've given second-level domains to all of their users. So if you have a profile set up at, say, audius.com / in this case, mcuban, then you also get mcuban.audius on their branded Handshake name. So here's a pie in the sky idea. If you combine this branded second level domains concept with Handshake logins that I showcased earlier with the wiki page, then you can imagine having a community platform where your community members all have branded, say, .ergo second level domains that they use to log into your community platform. And if you wanted to, you could generate a revenue by selling those second level domains as well. So you're basically another .com, except you have an extra use case beyond just selling a domain name that has .ergo. It's not just a branded domain name, but it's also a login credential for your community as well. It's pie in the sky idea, but there's no reason that wouldn't work. Cool. And then the last kind of use case that people seem really excited about are just emoji domains. So Handshake names can be really practically anything. They can be emojis, they can be Chinese characters, whatever. And so I think this is especially relevant for the crypto community because a lot of crypto projects identify with emojis. I can think of Pancake Swap with the pancake. You have, is Cream Finance? Do they have the ice cream cone? I think. And then Uniswap, I can imagine, they could be set up. They could have their website mirrored at just the unicorn emoji. So pretty cool use case. And it works. And it especially works well because these are dotless domain names, right? You can imagine it's not the best experience if I had to say go to unicorn.swap to get to Uniswap. But because you can combine it with the dotless domain, then it's just unicorn emoji. Cool. Right, so the main takeaway from this first half is just that Handshake makes it possible for you to truly own a top-level domain, which can be practically anything. And by truly own, that means it's uncensorable and it's private and secure. Cool. So that's the first half. The second half, that's the general overview, and then the second half gets a little bit more technical. But this is the part where Handshake is really revolutionizing internet security. Cool. So DNS is a pretty old technology, 40 years, 40 plus years. But the dangers of a DNS hijack attack is very modern still. So I mentioned Pancake Swap earlier, and Cream Finance as well. Just last year, less than a year ago, they were subject to a DNS hijack attack. What happened was the end user experience is you attempt to visit Pancake Swap's normal website, the domain name, just like you do every day. But unbeknownst to you, that website has actually been taken over. And so you're encouraged to enter your seed phrase or whatnot, and that goes straight to the bad actor who took over that website. So that was the result of a DNS attack. Cool. Cool. So to first go over how internet security works currently, HTTPS specifically. So on most websites, you'll see this little padlock icon, and if you click it, then you'll see this: connection is secure, certificate is valid. What does this actually mean? So your connection is secure. Essentially what happened is I imagine the manager of ergoplatform.org, they purchase a certificate or a key. You can think of it as it is a key. So they purchase a key from a certificate authority. And what they're doing with that key is when you, the end user, visit ergoplatform.org, then you're using that key to encrypt or just kind of lock all the contents you use that you're then going to send to Ergo Platform. So let's just use twitter.com as an example, since that's what's in here. So you visit twitter.com, and they have a key that they purchased from a certificate authority. And then the idea is you, the user, get that key, and you log into Twitter, you type in your username, password, and then they use that key to lock that information in like a little box or an envelope, which they then send across the web to twitter.com. And then twitter.com, the recipient is the only person with the proper key to then unlock those contents to then see, your actual email and password that you then use to log in. And the idea behind this is if you have any intermediaries, which there are many of, when you really browse anywhere on the internet, your DNS traffic can go through like 60 devices, just like a simple website search. And so it passes through a lot of people's hands, and you don't want those people snooping on your private credentials, right? Like your credit card details. And so when you lock those contents in with this key, then anybody who sees it, they can't see it because it's a locked box. So they can't open it, put something malicious in it, close it, and then hand it off. They can't do that because they don't have the key. Cool. And how this system works, so this leads to the question, how do you know that the key that you use, that the end user is given, is actually legit? And so how this works, it's pretty ridiculous how the system works. Essentially, in your computer, so maybe Mac or Windows, it comes pre-installed with the list of certificate authorities that Microsoft or Apple has vetted. So you're trusting Apple and Microsoft on their judgment of who is a legit certificate authority. And so they're just saying, hey, you can trust these guys. It comes pre-installed. Don't worry about it. And for the website user, for the domain manager, they must purchase a certificate from one of these certificate authorities who have been vetted, and that's how they determine that key is valid. So this essentially is, hey, you've purchased it from one of these list of 300 certificate authorities, so we know this key is legit. That's how the security system works. So what happens if one of those certificate authorities gets hacked? Then they can issue that bad actor can issue a malicious certificate to the domain you're visiting. We're using twitter.com earlier. And so you're still going to see that connection is secure message. You're still going to see the certificate is valid because it comes from that list of vetted certificate authorities. But that bad actor now has the proper key to see everything that you're sending. So they can unlock all the contents. They see your password. They see your credit card numbers, whatnot. They can do whatever the heck they want with it. So pretty funny system, right? So here's where Handshake comes in. So Handshake really overhauls this certificate authority model by really elegant system. You just pin the key to the name. What I mean by that is the key is pinned to the domain name records that are on the public blockchain. So you don't need to rely on a certificate authority to say, hey, this is a legit key. You can just see it on the chain that it's the right key. And by pinned to the name, that means only that key will only work with that specific domain name. So if some random rogue certificate authority who gets hacked, they issue a certificate for your domain name, it won't work because it's not pinned to the name on chain. Right. So in the certificate authority model, all it takes to compromise your internet security is for one certificate authority to get hacked. And so the more, or compromised, you don't even need to get hacked. It could just be a bad actor in the certificate authority organization, whoever works there, right? And so in that system, in order for your security to be compromised, it just takes one bad actor. And so for every additional certificate authority you add on to the system, the overall security gets weaker and weaker because there's now additional attack vectors. There's now additional organizations you can attack to issue these rogue certificates. Whereas in the Handshake system, if you want to break the security of one of the named keys, then you really need to break the security of the entire blockchain. And so with every additional node, full node you add on to the blockchain, it just gets more and more secure. So how internet security should have worked in the first place, right? Cool. So the takeaway, Handshake replaces that certificate authority model with its decentralized blockchain. Instead of relying on certificate authorities to tell you what key is legit, you just look at it for yourself. So it's kind of similar to the local resolution I was talking about before, where you just look at the chain for the DNS records yourself. You don't need to rely on a DNS resolver to tell you how to get there. It's kind of the same situation. You don't need to rely on certificate authorities to tell you if a key is legit. You just look at it yourself. It's a trustless process. Cool. This quick overview of these are the founders of Handshake. Pretty CEO, CTO of Purse.io, which is one of, if not the first, commercial use case of Bitcoin. So they're real Bitcoin OGs. Joseph Poon, he's the co-creator of the Bitcoin Lightning Network, which you might be familiar with. And then Andrew Lee, he founded Internet Private Access, their VPN. So they raised $10 million from these VCs and more. And then they took 10% of the total supply between the sponsors and the creators, between the investors and the founders. The cool thing is they gave almost 50% of the total supply to open source developers. So what this means is if you had a GitHub account with 15 followers or more back in 2018, I think, was when the snapshot was taken, then you can just claim something like 4,200 Handshake coins. No strings attached. I'm not sure actually how the claiming process works, but there are instructions I can send them to you if you happen to have been on GitHub with 15 followers or more back in 2018. There's just free Handshake coins waiting for you. Cool. So the really cool thing is I mentioned they raised $10 million from those investors, and then they just donated the entirety of the $10 million away to open source communities, to open source projects, right? So Wiki Media is in here, and whatnot. You might know some of these. So none of the money that they raised from the investors, A16Z, Sequoia, none of the money they raised actually went into the development costs. They didn't pay themselves with it. They just donated all of that away. And then they launched a mainnet, and once they launched the Handshake mainnet 2 years ago now, they stepped away from the project. So the point of all of that is you can actually say Handshake is a truly community-run project. Right? It's community-funded because none of the funds from the original founders is floating around in the ecosystem. So all of the development efforts that has happened in the Handshake ecosystem since its mainnet launch has been purely from the community itself. And it's been community operated. So since the mainnet launch, all the pushing of Handshake development and its growth has come directly from its community. So that kind of leads into Namebase. I mentioned I'm the community manager at Namebase. So at the end of the day, we're just a community member within the Handshake ecosystem. You can think of us as we're just such big fans of Handshake that we went out of our way to go and raise VC funds to build Namebase, the startup that exists only to support Handshake's adoption. So how we do that, we're first an exchange, so you can come to Namebase and you can purchase Handshake coins through our exchange, and you can of course store it in your Namebase account. It's a cloud wallet. You can then use those coins to bid on names to get a name, or you can, we're also a marketplace, so you can also buy and sell Handshake names on the secondary market directly on Namebase. We're a DNS manager, so you can manage your DNS records directly on Handshake, directly on Namebase, and then we're also a registry. So if you wanted to, so I mentioned the example of .ergo. If you want to create a business selling second-level domains to your community members that they didn't use to log in, then if you want to sell those second-level domains, you can do so through our registry. Our registry is created by the same person who created the .io registry, so just pretty cool background. Yeah, so again, takeaways. First, Handshake makes it possible for you to truly own a domain name because they're top-level domains that are uncensorable and decentralized and secure, private. Private because when you use a Handshake resolver, you're resolving those names yourself locally, so you don't, you don't need to send that information to ISPs or whatnot. Secure because Handshake replaces that certificate authority system that I mentioned before. So the easiest way to get a Handshake name is going to be through Namebase. I'm of course heavily biased, but if you are interested, then I recommend just swinging by Namebase, doing some searches for names that you would like to use as your name. Right, and then moving forward, so this is just kind of our focus for at least the next year, I would imagine. Everyone's focused on coin listings. Browser adoption is going to be pretty important because I mentioned currently most browsers don't support Handshake, so you have to do something to tell your browser how to actually get to a Handshake name. But Opera is planning on integrating Handshake, so that would mean if you're just an Opera user, then you can just access Handshake names. You don't have to do anything extra. So that would be pretty cool. that reduces a lot of the friction with using a Handshake domain. And then the last one is, which I think is actually the most important, is pushing for reputable Web3 DWeb projects to mirror their websites on a decentralized Handshake name. You still keep the existing domain name, but then on the off chance that that domain name goes down or gets taken down, your end users will still be able to access your platform through your decentralized Handshake name. Yeah, so that's about it. And then I think we're wrapping up hiring this month. But if you got excited by this seemed like something you want to work on, I encourage you to reach out to me, and we can just take it from there. The only real requirement is just you need to know Node.js, and then a plus is Go. But that's about it. So not too strict requirements. The easiest way to really reach me or dive into Handshake, really this is the best starting point, because it has all the resources you need, community resources. We have our learning center and whatnot. It links to everything that you could possibly want. And then the Discord chat is where I live. So if you need to reach me, then just swing by the Discord. If you have questions, then also swing by the Discord. Our community members exist to help you get acquainted with Handshake. Yeah, community.namebase.io, swing by the Discord chat, and then we can take it from there. Cool.